This documentary unfolds the saga of the C-5 Galaxy, a tale of ambition, struggle, and the indomitable will to achieve the impossible. From Lockheed's drafts to Iran's grand schemes, we explore how a plane that no one wanted became a testament to resilience and innovation. Through triumphs and setbacks, the story of the C-5 serves as a powerful reminder that failure is a constant companion on the path to greatness, but it is the courage to keep going that defines true success, or so they say. In the annals of aviation history, few stories are as dramatic as the turbulent journey of the C-5 Galaxy, a plane that seemed destined for the scrap heap, yet was revived by the audacious vision of a world leader on the brink of losing his empire. Designed to be the cornerstone of the U.S. Air Force's strategic airlift capability, the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy faced immense challenges from the outset. Plagued by technical issues and ballooning costs, the project threatened to sink Lockheed Corporation. Engineers and executives grappled with the relentless specter of failure, questioning whether this behemoth would survive its turbulent inception.
Today, the C-5 remains the large muscle of the Air Force strategic lift. Since entering operational service in 1970, it has supported every major U.S. military operation, from Vietnam to Operation Enduring Freedom. It has also provided essential humanitarian relief during natural disasters. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have given it a new lease on life. The C-5 Galaxy is a colossal aircraft, 247 feet long and 65 feet high, capable of carrying 36 standard pallets and 81 troops simultaneously. It can transport any air-transportable U.S. Army combat equipment, including the 74-ton Mobile Scissors Bridge. With unique features like forward and aft cargo doors for simultaneous loading, kneeling capability, and high-wing design, it has transformed airlift operations. Powered by 4 General Electric TF39-1A turbofan engines, each generating 41,000 pounds of thrust, the C-5's technical prowess ensures it remains an essential asset.
The story of the C-5 Galaxy began when the Army required a transport to replace the aging Douglas C-133 and complement the C-141 Starlifter fleet, capable of flying 4,000 nautical miles, capable of carrying 100,000 to 200,000 pounds over intercontinental distances and operating from semi-prepared runways. On 27 April 1964, requests for proposal consisting of 1,500 pages for the Heavy Logistics System (CXHLS) were issued. By 18 May 1964, airframe proposals came from Boeing, Douglas, General Dynamics, Lockheed Georgia, and Martin Marietta, while engine proposals arrived from General Electric, Curtiss-Wright, and Pratt & Whitney.
After the design competition, Boeing, Douglas, and Lockheed were contracted to further develop their aircraft designs, while General Electric and Pratt & Whitney received contracts for high bypass ratio turbofan engines. The stakes were high and the competition was intense. In 1965, with the C-141 production ending and no major contracts, Lockheed faced a dire future. Unlike Boeing and Douglas, Lockheed depended heavily on defense contracts. The C-5A bid was a make-or-break moment for Lockheed in 1965, crucial to avoid laying off up to 10,000 employees and to keep their head above water amid a dry spell of major contracts. The aircraft was expected to weigh around 700,000 pounds, with each engine providing about 40,000 pounds of thrust. General Electric was selected to develop the engines for the new aircraft. All 3 designs had high wings, 4 large turbofan engines, and front and rear doors for efficient loading. Boeing and Douglas chose conventional tails, while Lockheed used a T-tail. Boeing's design for C-5 competition excelled in wind tunnel tests, and though different, it inspired the development of the revolutionary Boeing 747.
The competing contractors and subcontractors had spent over $60 million during the competition. In April 1965, Boeing, Douglas, and Lockheed submitted their final bids for the 115 aircraft contract. Boeing bid $2.2 billion, Douglas $2 billion, and Lockheed the lowest at $1.9 billion. Despite meeting contract requirements after last-minute wing redesigns, Lockheed's proposal was initially deemed inferior by the board, which recommended Boeing's design. However, top Air Force officials overruled this decision and awarded the C-5A contract to Lockheed.
To avoid costly delays in training and base construction, the contract included a penalty clause. Lockheed would be fined $12,000 per day for each late aircraft delivery, excluding the first batch. When Secretary of Defense McNamara announced on September 30, 1965, that Lockheed secured the contract to produce the first 58 C-5A aircraft, Production Run A, the competition paperwork weighed over 36 tons. Lockheed began the ambitious task of developing what would come to be known as the world's largest aircraft, the C-5 Galaxy. The C-5 Galaxy project involved numerous subcontractors across the United States, each contributing specialized components and expertise to bring this massive aircraft to life. Everything seemed to be coming together smoothly, but soon Lockheed's weight reduction program and its haunting issues began to surface. By early 1967, the Air Force noted minimal margins for overloading and metal fatigue, and cracks appeared in 1969. Despite Lockheed's efforts to fix these problems, they persisted, reducing the C-5A's lifespan to 1/4 of the intended 30,000 flying hours. By mid-1970, as the 40th C-5A was being assembled, wing fatigue became evident, with parts for the 60th already in production. In 1968, a fuselage upbending test showed the wing failing at 128% of the limit load, below the required 150%. Despite modifications, the wing failed again at 125% during a July 1970 test. In 1968 and 1969, tests showed that the main landing gear on the first two C-5A aircraft malfunctioned. Lockheed blamed this on the interim configuration of the test aircraft, but later models had similar issues. On June 6, 1970, the first operational C-5A, piloted by General Jack Catton, experienced a landing gear failure in front of military and civilian officials, underscoring the ongoing issues. All these issues led to much higher costs than Lockheed anticipated. By November 1968, the estimated cost of the C-5A program had exceeded $5 billion, significantly higher than originally planned, including extensive modifications.
The public learned about the C-5A's cost overruns and technical problems when A. Ernest Fitzgerald testified before Congress in November 1968. His testimony confirmed the cost for 115 C-5As and spare parts would be around $5.2 billion, nearly $2 billion more than estimated. In 1969, the Air Force's decision to limit their second purchase to 27 C-5A aircraft significantly hurt Lockheed, deepening financial troubles and resulting in more cost overruns. 1 year later, Lockheed decided to take a $200 million loss on the C-5A development production program to avoid legal battles with the Department of Defense.
A year after, Secretary of the Treasury Connolly announced a $250 million loan guarantee to prevent Lockheed's bankruptcy. Despite delays and landing gear issues, the Military Airlift Command's 1st Squadron achieved initial operational capability by September 1970. During static and fatigue testing, cracks were noticed in the wings of several aircraft. All C-5 aircrafts had to be grounded. Lockheed had miscalculated wing loading and eventually ultimate wing fatigue life. As a consequence, the C-5A fleet was restricted to 80% of maximum design loads, and load alleviation systems had to be added to maintain the limitation. This meant the Air Force would essentially operate 30,000-hour C-5A airframes with 7,100-hour wings, which would lead to culminating in a costly project to re-wing the C-5As for the next decade. In May 1973, the 81st and final C-5A, tail number 70-0467, was delivered to the Military Airlift Command at Dover Air Force Base, Delaware. despite more than 20 deficiencies remaining.
Through the 1960s and 1970s, the relationship between the Shah of Iran and the United States grew stronger. Commercial ties expanded, and Iran's rapid development benefited the U.S. The Shah launched a major defense buildup, purchasing over $16 billion in arms from the U.S. between 1972 and 1977, in addition to about $3 billion per year in civilian trade.
It is May 1974, and exactly 1 year after the C-5 production line has been closed. The C-5A assembly tooling has been left in place to minimize startup costs in case of a decision to restart production. The Shah of Iran has a strong interest in modernizing Iran's military, including its air force, and appointed capable leaders like General Nader Jahanbani to oversee these efforts. Iran very much wants to buy a cargo jet and a refueling tanker for the 30 Navy F-14 fighters it has bought recently, in addition to the 50 Air Force F-15 warplanes it said it would like to purchase. Iran offers to put up the estimated $160 million, equivalent to $989 million today, necessary to reopen and restart the Lockheed C-5 cargo jet production line. The purchase price would be in addition to the financing to resume production.
I am not saying it is likely that such a decision will be made, but it is certainly possible. There are some developments going on now that might cause it to happen.
Iran informed the U.S. Defense Department it would like to purchase at least 6 of the C-5S at an estimated cost of $388 million. Under terms of the offer, Iran would recoup its production money through a $3 million royalty payment on each of the jets subsequently sold. Lockheed has told the Iranian government there is a potential worldwide market of 100 Galaxies. The Iranian offer, however, could help Lockheed to be the company selected to build a combination refueling tanker and cargo jet the Defense Department is thinking about. At first, the Pentagon has requested $20 million for the fiscal year, beginning to determine the best way to develop such a plane. Defense Secretary James Schlesinger believes a new tanker will eventually be needed to support the U.S. bomber force. The Pentagon has made an encouraging, yet non-committal reply to Iran, but stating that nothing could be done in the immediate future. It is the fall of 1974. Proposals by Iran to finance the resumption of C-5A production as a prelude to purchasing some of the planes themselves have been under discussion for more than 6 months now. High-level Iranian-American talks were held in Washington in November on a recently sweetened offer by the Shah of Iran to pay for reopening the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation's C-5A production line. Shah wants to buy 10 of the $55 million military cargo planes. The latest no-strings-attached proposal from Iran was proving much more attractive to defense officials here than the earlier proposals. At this point, the main thing that appeared to be holding up the plan was a study by the Ford administration of the broad strategic implications of furnishing C-5As to the Middle East.
By this time, the C-5A production line in Marietta, Georgia, had been shut down nearly 2 years ago. The overriding consideration, though, seemed to be how introduction of C-5As into Iran would affect the complex Middle East political and military outlook. However, there seemed to be little concern about the issue of making available highly advanced technology to the Iranians. Industry sources at the time believed it was unlikely that the Pentagon would dig in its heels on that matter when it already had approved the sale to Iran of 80 F-14A Navy fighters, planes that incorporate some of the most sophisticated military technology to be found anywhere.
The Iranian Revolution in 1979 led to the overthrow of the Shah of Iran. This political upheaval halted all ongoing military procurement, including the potential order for C-5 Galaxy aircraft. Unclassified documents revealed that the Jimmy Carter administration had extensive contact with Khomeini and his entourage leading up to the Iranian Revolution of 1979. They essentially paved the way for Khomeini's rise to power, leaving a longtime ally in the lurch to face the revolution alone. On January 16, 1979, the Shah left Iran. His departure marked the end of 54 years of the Pahlavi dynasty and the beginning of a new era under Khomeini. His request to stay in the UK was firmly rejected by Thatcher. While requesting permission to enter the United States, the Carter administration hesitated too, recognizing potential consequences for U.S. interests in Iran if Pahlavi were welcomed into the country. Finally, on the 22nd of October, he was admitted to Cornell Medical Center, New York, where he had surgery related to his cancer treatment discovered 6 years ago. On November 4, 1979, while the Shah was still in hospital, the storming of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran occurred. 53 United States diplomats and citizens were held hostage. The new Iranian regime demanded the Shah return in order to stand trial for the crimes he was accused of committing against Iranians. The Shah left the U.S. in December 1979 and was ultimately granted asylum in Egypt. He passed away in Cairo, Egypt, about 17 months after the revolution, on July 27, 1980. The hostage crisis ended on January 20, 1981, just minutes after Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as president. Fate has a funny way of making the impossible possible. Just 3 years after his death, the wheels were set in motion again to get the C-5 airplane production back on track in the United States. It's as if the Shah's dreams had sown seeds that would only bear fruit after he was gone. The Reagan administration, recognizing the critical need for increased airlift capacity, breathed new life into the C-5 program by launching the C-5B production. It was as if the Shah's vision had been lying dormant, to be discovered nearly a decade after. On the 16th, 1982, in a letter, President Ronald Reagan addresses the Speaker of the House to emphasize the importance of enhancing the U.S. military's airlift capabilities. He outlines the need to rapidly deploy forces to defend U.S. interests and also recommended a significant increase in air cargo capacity, especially for outsized cargo that only the C-5 Galaxy could handle. Reagan proposes an airlift program which includes purchasing 50 additional C-5 aircraft to quickly address the shortfall in outsized cargo capacity. He argues against using commercial aircraft for military needs, as they would require costly modifications and still fail to meet the necessary requirements. Soon after, Lockheed Corporation and Boeing Company are locked in a heated competition over the Reagan administration's $8.2 billion plan to buy additional C-5 cargo planes from Lockheed. The outcome of this vote will significantly impact the U.S. Air Force's airlift capabilities and future military procurement policies. With the C-17 program still some years from completion, Congress approved funding for a new version of the C-5, the C-5B, in July 1982 to expand airlift capacity.